ESP. This is Matthew Sercely of AgoristTaxAdvice.com, here to talk about, frankly, something that really annoys me. I get a lot of emails and a lot of calls and a lot of people saying, "Hey, I hear that the rich people use trusts to save money on taxes. How does it work?" I don't really know where this idea started. I think it kind of became a conflation of it can help save money by preventing your heirs from wasting the money. And so rich people can use it to keep the money in their family, but somehow people think it saves you money on taxes as well. Trusts are almost never a tax strategy. There are very rare cases where they can be, but they're primarily estate planning tools. And again, for the wealthy to protect their children from themselves from getting all the money when they're 18 or 19 or 20 and blowing it. So if your goal is to pay less in taxes, this is usually the wrong path to be going down. A lot of people think that trusts somehow hide income or they change your tax bracket or lower your tax bracket. Um, I see people advertise them as moving your money someplace untouchable. It that maybe really is untouchable by the state court systems in some instances, but it's not untouchable by the IRS or the federal government. Some people say it avoids IRS scrutiny. And maybe it does, but I don't think anybody really knows if it does or doesn't. And the reality is, the IRS knows exactly what a trust is. And even worse, trusts have their own tax rules. And almost always, it's either going to be you pay the same tax or you pay more in tax. Essentially, you're not escaping the tax system. You're just choosing a very different and usually harsher version of the tax system. So first of all, there are two types of trusts. There are revocable, you can undo them, and there are irrevocable. Once you set them up, you can't undo them. Revocable trusts literally do nothing for federal taxes. I don't know of any states where they affect state taxes, but maybe they do. But for federal taxes, they do nothing because as long as it's revocable, you and the trust are considered the same thing. The tax code ignores the trust and every bit of it flows back on your own personal return. So, while they're very good for avoiding probate, although probate isn't as bad in some states as people make it out to be, so make sure that's actually a goal. Trust can be excellent for privacy. They're excellent for estate organization, making sure your kids or your grandkids are taken care of and don't blow all the money. They're not a great tax strategy. And so if somebody sold you a revocable trust as a tax strategy, either they don't understand the tax code, or maybe they're just hoping that you didn't. Now, irrevocable trusts, you can't just undo it. You have to set it up. You have to set who the beneficiaries are. And so already to do this, you've given up the money. And maybe you can be one of the beneficiaries, but overall, it's not your money anymore. It's got to follow the rules of the trust. They have the same levels of tax brackets as you do. So there is a 0% and a 10% and a 12% and a 22%, all the way up to 37%. Except you hit the top federal rate at $15,000 of income if the money stays in the trust. So if this trust is generating income and it's over $15,000, you are paying the highest federal tax rate there is. For individuals, especially married couples, you don't hit that until you're at like $450,000 or $500,000. So you didn't save any taxes by doing this. You increased them or you kept them the same if you're somebody who makes so much money that you're already at the tax bracket. Great, you didn't do any good. That's if the money stays in the trust. If the money comes out, the money is taxed to the recipient. This is one of the few areas where it can work very well. If you set up a trust and the money's going to your 25-year-old kid who makes way less money than you, this may actually lower the tax of this income. But there's a catch even here because there's something called the kiddie tax. Any income well, any unearned income that a minor child has is taxed at their parents' rate. So if you're using this money to give the money to your 16-year-old, there's no tax savings. You literally just paid a bunch of legal fees to recreate your own tax bracket, at least until they're old enough to get their own. Now, I see a lot of people say this can save you money on state taxes. And that's true. It can. Because you can live in New York and New York City and set up a trust in Tennessee or Texas where there's no state income tax, and you can fight at least to have that trust be considered truly a Tennessee or other no income tax place and avoid those state income taxes. Now, the rules on if this is going to work depend vastly on the state you're in because they're going to look at things that like where the trustees are. So if you're the trustee, if you're the person who is in charge of managing the trust, well, New York is probably still going to win that fight and you're going to owe New York tax on it. Some states, particularly the states you imagine, New York, California, Illinois, New Jersey, they fight this very aggressively. And so even if you win, you might lose. Here's the bigger thing. Fine, you reduce your state tax, but if you increase your federal tax, that's not a win. I've literally seen people set these trusts up going, wow, I'm going to save 8% state tax. Yeah, but now the income went from being taxed at 24% to 37%. Unless you just really love the federal government and hate your state, I don't think that's a very good deal. Even then, it's not a very good deal, frankly. So, trusts are great. I am in the process of setting up a trust myself to make sure that my family is taken care of, particularly my kids are taken care of when I'm gone. Great for estate planning, great for asset protection, very useful for special needs planning. If you have a child who is developmentally delayed and will not be able to take care of themselves, trusts make a fantastic amount of sense. In limited situation, they can be great for business succession. I've seen a lot of law firms where someone wants to leave the law firm to their kid who's in law school, but they're not a lawyer yet. Well, the trust can hold on to it until the kid becomes a lawyer and can then legally own the law firm. Very occasionally, yes, you can save some state taxes on it, or you can use this as a way to get some money to your kids and avoid some taxation on it. But for 99% of Americans, probably more than that, after all the expenses setting up the trust, you're probably still negative. So if your goal is to save taxes, stop just listening to YouTubers talking about what they like to sell people. You should be looking at things like entity structure, deductions. If you're a business, the R&D tax credits are great now. Do retirement planning, do time strategies. And for high earners, whether you're W-2 or business, there are investments you can make, things like oil and gas and solar power production that can have tax savings where you save more money than you invest in limited circumstances. These real savings are in really the boring, pretty repeatable strategies for the most part, not some sort of exotic legal structure. And if anybody is saying a trust is going to you avoid taxes, they're either defrauding you or they're too stupid for you to work with them. So, trusts are tools. They're powerful tools. They're great tools. They're not a tax hack. And if you treat them like one, you almost always just cost yourself money instead of saving yourself.